Leanne. Welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I want to share with you a new art supply that I just got in the mail. I haven't tried these yet. I've never used these, but I've watched a few videos and researched them. And so these are the Caran Neocolor 2 water-soluble wax pastels. So I do a lot of watercolor work. That's primarily the medium I work in. These are water-soluble, so you can wet them and make really vivid, strong blends, I guess, with these colors. So I'm really excited to test these out and see how they look on paper. I haven't tried them. I was waiting to do the video first. So we're going to see those together for the first time. So I guess before we start, let's take a look at the colors that I bought. I bought these from an art store in Edmonton, Canada, in Alberta. And so I just bought open stock. There are some packages that you can get, prepackaged kits of these colors. I didn't want just the generic 8-color Crayola box. I do a lot of vivid colors in my work, so I wanted something that had a little more punch, maybe some more pastels, and so I did pick my own colors by hand. So let's take a look at the colors that I picked. So this color is lemon yellow, orange, vermilion, salmon pink, purple violet, periwinkle, royal blue, light blue, turquoise blue, turquoise green, jade green, and yellow green. There was one color I did have to substitute in my order. I wanted a pink, and I substituted that for the salmon pink. It's a little bit different. The salmon pink is more of a warm tone, and it's a softer color, but I think I still got a good variance. So let's swatch these out and see what they look like and see how they act. So for the swatches, I'm going to use this old sketchbook I have. I started this in February of 2017. This is a Pentalic sketchbook, and I use this one mostly for sample colors like I'm doing and just rough sketches. I don't use this very much, but it is cold-pressed watercolor paper, 100% cotton, so it should be great for testing out these colors. So I have them all swatched out, and I got a cup of water here. I'm going to use this number 8 Grumbacher watercolor brush. This is one that I bought from Michael's, and I used it when I started watercolor. I don't really use this one anymore. I mostly use Princeton, but it's still a really good brush, and so I think it'll be good to use for these. With this one, I put a little less water on my brush. I found that it was diluting the paint a little too much, or the pigment, but it might just be because this is a lighter color. It seems to be having a harder time activating all the pigment. I don't want to water it down too much because I want to keep that intensity, We'll try it with the next one too. I'm gonna just squeeze out some of the water on my brush. I find that when you start to, it's almost like scumbling when you rub the brush along the paper to pull up that pigment and make it active. When you can see more defined pigment laid down behind the color, it's just because it seems like it's still sticking to the paper and it hasn't fully activated yet. I'm going to try a little bit more water on my brush, not squeeze it out with my hand. I find that this activates a lot quicker. You can see kind of the ridges still on the paper that's hasn't been picked up yet. These two colors almost look the same. This one's obviously a little bit darker, more muted. They're really pretty though, they're very vivid. And they don't take a lot of effort to activate. I find though you do have to scumble, kind of scrub your brush into the paper to pick up the pigment. It's not like you could just brush over them and they immediately turn to like a watercolor. Oh, this color is so pretty. I love this. I knew I'd like this color. I knew I would. This is probably one of my favorite colors or pigment colors right now in painting and colored pencil. I think if you wanted to be painting something that's lighter, if you really wanted pastel tones, with watercolors sometimes you get too much pigment and it makes everything dark. You don't want everything to be watered down. I feel like these crayons would be really good to use for keeping light tones. If you look at this blue, even though I've added water to it or whatever, it hasn't lost its intensity like the chroma of the color, but it's still very light. Whereas with watercolor, it's usually you have darker pigments and to get them lighter, you water them down. So I feel like if you were someone who normally or naturally painted more light, or that was more your style, your art style, something like this might be really nice for maintaining consistent lighter colors in your artwork. And it still has that that high level of chroma or intensity. This is another really pretty color. I might have a little bit too much water that fell off my brush in this one. I find that the more water I have on my brush, just the faster it activates off the paper. It doesn't seem to harm it any other way much than that. And these Grumbacher brushes do hold quite a bit of water. So these are looking really good. I think the colors are beautiful. I can definitely see the difference between these two, even though they almost seem like they're the same color. This one's a bit more intense or darker. If I were to pull those colors, let me see which ones they are. So that would be these two pigments. So this is the purple violet, and this one is, I think, yeah, just regular purple. This one obviously has the most intensity, the most saturation. It is the darkest color that I picked as well. If you look at comparison with this is royal blue, and this one is ultramarine. Whoops, this one's ultramarine. You can see that even though they in the color of the crayon they look almost similar, there's quite a difference here between these two. I think my favorite color definitely has to be this royal blue. So I'm going to try some more applications because there's a few different ways you can use these. So let's try a couple things. So I'm going to take the purple and I'm going to try just pulling it off the crayon, opposed to wetting the paper after it's applied. So I'm actually, I don't know if you can see, this is splattering on my artwork. I didn't even think about that. That's actually pretty cool because I use a lot of splatter work in my illustrations. So the fact that I could just do that is pretty neat. I didn't even think of doing that. It happened by accident. So I'm kind of glad I tried this. Another option is to put down water and then put the color into the water. Just going to try and take off as much as I can on this brush. This is a very thirsty brush. That looks really nice. So it seems more intense. And then I guess you could come back in, put a little more water on my brush, and you could come back in and move that around if you wanted. Diluted that pigment a little bit. It does seem to stick though to the paper underneath. I can't seem to get that to blend out very nicely. I don't know if I really like that way of doing it. I probably wouldn't do it this way. I do like when you touch the crayon to the water surface, it adds that intensity. And it does kind of blend itself if there's water there. You can see the water's kind of pulled out a little bit, but if you try to blend this, it's leaving marks underneath they seem to just be harder to get to. Maybe they're more ingrained in the texture of the paper and it's harder to pull them up. I also don't want to wear down this paper either. So I think little drops of color like that, if you had a watercolor painting and you just wanted to add pops of saturated color, just coming in and dropping this crayon in little bits like that, I think it'd be really cool. I think that looked really nice. So the reason I bought these colored crayon, these water-soluble pastels, is I've been using a lot of pops of color in my journals lately. So for example, this illustration, I've been using some Posca pens to do some interesting colors. I got some pinks in the shadows and some turquoise and kind of a medium pink in the shadows under here. And so just adding pops of color and interesting colors where you wouldn't expect it. So I thought that these might be unique to try in this application as well, kind of more on the watercolor side and not so much of a hard line that is created with Poscas. So that's kind of my intention for using these. One pro tip that I want to share that I saw on the Frugal Crafters channel is she suggested when you sharpen your crayons that you sharpen them over a palette, and so the shavings that fall off, you can keep them and re-wet them later with your brush and use them because they are good. It's still part of this main pigment here that you can reuse it. So I thought that was a really good tip and I wanted to share that with you guys. I think with these here, I just think they have a little bit too much water in these ones that are blooming. Maybe this, and maybe up here. And that could be my fault with having too much water in that brush. I'm not used to using that brush as well, so it's possible that it just had a little bit too much water in it and created these blooms. But I think these colors are really pretty, and I'm just going to try putting a little bit more of this pigment really lightly to see if I can add this as a little bit more of a solid color. So right now the page is still damp and it's going down very evenly. You can see that there's no real white space showing. Whereas when I first colored it, you could see a lot of the paper spacing showing through where the texture was picking up the pigment and the underlayer wasn't. So I'm just going to try to pull this out a little bit and see what happens. Again, this brush just seems to love water. Doesn't seem to be moving too much. It might be because it's already wet. But you can get a little bit more intensity on the pigment there, so that should still be good. So I find overall these colors are very light, but they still have a little bit of an opaqueness to them. And you can see in my water cup that, I don't know if that really picks up on camera, but it's actually pretty cloudy compared to what it was when I poured water into it. It's really hard to see actually, but let's do a quick line comparison test and see how that looks. I'm going to set up some ink lines and do one more pass over these and see how it really looks. So I have these all swatched out on a line that I drew just with my number 8 micron. And so I'm just going to wet these and see the opacity. You can kind of see how cloudy that is compared to, I guess I'm used to transparent watercolors. I use mostly transparent. So this is probably like a semi-transparent, I'd say. It's possible too that The ratings could be different between them. I haven't checked to see if they're all the same opacity rating. I'm assuming that there's variances between them. It feels for the most part that they're coming up mostly semi-opaque to closer to the opaque, or being 100% opaque. I think I would be okay with this. Normally I don't like opaque or semi-opaque watercolors, but because the vibrant colors are meant to lay down at the end of my painting, that's kind of what I want to use them for. I think I'd be okay with the fact that they could be a bit opaque and hold up their pigment on top of whatever I'm applying them to. So I feel like that would be okay. I'm okay with that. I also did try to pick colors as well when I was picking the open stock, to choose colors that had a good light fast rating. There are a few colors that aren't as strong on the light fast, but I did want to make sure that I got things that were more favorable on that side. I think with this royal blue, I honestly just expected it to be, to be opaque, but more so just because it's dark to not show that black line, not because it's actually opaque. And I can still see the black line showing through, not as much, but I think just because that color is so dark to begin with, it's going to be hard to see that black line anyways. It does seem though when they're drying that they're getting a little bit lighter. I think the vermilion, maybe the orange, these two here, show that line the easiest. But they do still hold their intensity too, which is nice. That's pretty. That's a pretty color. So there's a look at the line test. I think this looks pretty decent, more opaqueness, I guess, than I expected, but not anything I'm really bothered by. I think overall it's pretty good. So I hope you all enjoyed this look at my new NEOCOLOUR 2 watercolor pastels. These are pretty interesting medium, and I think it'll just take some time for me to work with them and get used to them, get the hang of them, and figure out the colors that I really like or the ones I gravitate towards. I like that you can buy open stock, because even though they have the sets, you don't always get every color that you're probably going to use. So I like the idea that I can pick the ones just that I would want, and nothing really goes to waste. I think that I would use all of these colors in some capacity. The one thing I do like about these crayons is they have these little grooves here, so these notches, so that you can pull off the wrapper as you go. So they're almost in sections, so you're not just like peeling the entire thing. I do know that these crayons are pretty fragile too. I've seen a lot of people mention that their crayons break pretty easily, and like even this one, for instance, the whole side's chiseled off. It probably got banged against another crayon or something. So I am going to be very careful with these and try to keep them in this little box that they came in with this paper towel, and hopefully they will stay good. Hopefully they won't break. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you use these or you have any colors that you would suggest that you like, just let me know in the comments below. I'd be curious to check them out. Or if there's any different ways that you use them that you think might be unique and you want to share with others, let us know. I think that'd be really cool to see. So if you did like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you're notified as I post more videos to my channel. Thank you so much for watching.